The biggest X factor for the 2024 Tennessee Titans is the performance of Will Levis, and there isn't a close second. I'll explain why on today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. It's top 5 week here on the Locked On Titans podcast. I'm going to be doing top 5 lists all week long. We're going to start today's show, the top 5 X factors for the Titans this year, the top 5 potential breakout players for the Titans this year, and the top 5 make or break seasons ahead. Can't wait to dive into all of that. Before I do, thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. You're not going to beat that anywhere else. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Titans podcast. Speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. It's going to be a great week here on Top 5 Week tomorrow. We're going to look at cut candidates. We're going to look at trade options. We're going to look at potential first-time Pro Bowlers. As we get through the rest of the week, I got a lot of great stuff planned for you guys as well. And at the end of the month, training camp begins. So make sure, again, that you get subscribed, stay subscribed, throw a thumbs up on the video if you're watching on YouTube, help support the channel. With that being said, my number one X factor for the Titans is by far Will Levis. I mean, there really is no other good answer if you ask for the number one X factor. Look, if Will Levis makes the leap, if Will Levis takes a big jump, if Will Levis goes from, the B-level quarterback that I talked about a couple of weeks ago to being an A-minus level quarterback, one of the top 12 quarterbacks in the NFL, the Tennessee Titans are going to hit their ceiling. Like, they have put Ran Carthon and the front office have put together a good enough roster to do that. Yes, there are some holes on defense, which we have discussed at length. The right side of the offensive line could be better, of course. Those are absolute factors. This isn't a stacked roster, but the roster is good enough for the Titans to be a division winner, for the Titans to make the playoffs. All of that is going to depend on how good Will Levis is this year, how well he performs. And on the flip side of it, if Will Levis does not play well, if Will Levis plays terrible, if Will Levis does not get the job done, the Titans could be awful. The Titans could be as bad as all of these things that we see where they're last in the power rankings or second worst odds for the Super Bowl or all these different things that really irritate Titans fans right now because of the lack of faith. If Will Levis is bad, then that's what will happen. So a lot of this, of course, there are other X factor players I'm getting ready to dive into, but a lot of this hinges on Will Levis. Now, I'm curious what you guys think. Who are the other X factor players on the Tennessee Titans this year? Let me know down below in the comments on YouTube or hit me up on Twitter at TicTacTitans. Let me know what your thoughts are on the other X factor players. But the next one for me is J.C. Latham. I know Latham is a rookie, so that maybe makes it low-hanging fruit to pick him as an X factor because we simply don't know what we're going to get. But the reality is the Tennessee Titans have had the worst left tackle position for the last 2 years, maybe 2.5 years running. Okay, so if the Titans can get just average NFL left tackle play, it is going to fundamentally change what they can do on offense. It is that big of a deal. So if J.C. Latham is good, that gives the Titans the ability to hit their ceiling, and it gives Will Levis the ability to be the X factor in a positive way that the Titans need. If J.C. Latham is bad, though, and maybe we look at it at the end of the year like, oh, he's got to go over to right tackle. He can't be a left tackle in the NFL. If that's the way it turns out, the Titans are going to be in the dumps. There's just going to be no way for the offense to recover. And likewise, on a lower scale, obviously this is my number 3, where Latham is number 2. But Nicholas Petit-Frere, The two offensive tackle spots are so critical. I mean, they need Latham to be the number 7 overall pick, and they need NPF to just be an okay star. I don't even think he needs to be an average level starter. He could be slightly below average and still be decent. He just can't be the abomination that he was when he played in those few short weeks last season. Excuse me, just thinking about NPF's tape from last year when he played, obviously it does something to me, and it's hard to continue. If he plays like he played last year before injury, after the suspension, I have a hard time believing that the Titans can make the playoffs with that bad of a right tackle situation. Now, in the past, they've had Dennis Kelly and Quisenberry and other guys man that spot, and they were able to fight through it. But the other spots on the O-line were much more solidified, I guess, is the way to put it. So for me, looking at the two offensive tackles, can they play well? Can they hit their ceiling as a player? Can they at least give decent play to this offensive line? Because I feel pretty confident about Peter Skoronski at left guard, Cushenberry at center. Even if Sadiq Charles is your 5th best player on the offensive line, I think you could make that work. But if NPF is terrible and Latham is not a left tackle and is a right tackle, that will doom the Tennessee Titans season. And even if Will Levis plays decent, it may not be enough because of the pressure that he's going to be under. So Will Levis, J.C. Latham, NPF, the entire output on the offensive side of the ball really relies on them, in my opinion. On the defensive side, my last 2 X Factors doing top 5s this week. So Will Levis, J.C. Latham, NPF. My final 2 are on defense, and we got to start with Amani Hooker. So the Titans obviously haven't picked up a free agent safety yet, and Pickens are getting slim there, and it's making me think that maybe they'll just go with Elijah Molden as the other starting safety. Well, if that's the case, then Amani Hooker has to be special. He has to be. He has to be his 2020 self, where he's getting 4 interceptions and making pass breakups. I expect the cornerback play to be good with Roger McCreary in the slot and Cheeto and Snead on the outside. If Amani Hooker has a good season, like close to Pro Bowl level season, the Titans are going to create so many turnovers. It's going to be so difficult to throw the ball with the cornerbacks and then one really good safety that could totally change the defense on the back end. And all the concerns that we have about safety are still going to be there until they sign somebody, or if they don't, they'll persist. But Amani Hooker could really limit that if he has a good year. So I think on defense, you know what you're going to get from the cornerbacks. You know the linebackers aren't very good. You know that Jeffrey Simmons and Harold Landry are going to do their thing up front. It's Amani Hooker at safety. Can he control the back end? Can he create turnovers based on the pressure they're getting up front and the lack of space for wide receivers? Amani Hooker, big year coming for him to see if he's able to be an X factor for this team. It's really that simple. And then finally, my 5th X factor is T'Vondre Sweat. And simply because of the boom or bust nature of T'Vondre Sweat. If T'Vondre Sweat hits, pick hits hard. He's Dexter Lawrence. He's Vita Vea. You know what I mean? He's that level of player that can rush the passer, that can collapse a pocket, that can't be double teamed. But if things go bad, and he's a guy who can barely play 30 snaps a game, purely a 2-down run stuffer, standing up high, getting knocked off in his pass rush, it's going to be tough for the Titans. So Levis, Latham, NPF, Hooker, Sweat. We got to talk about the breakout candidates next. Before we do, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Look, I love sports. Pretty obvious, I would think. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But the finals are over. We're getting fewer games in sports than ever. And the sports, quite honestly, aren't sporting like we want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app, dream up bets anytime that I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. And Titans plus 4.5 week 1 against Chicago. Love that. If you like it as well, head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer. That's FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Titans fans, let's continue today's first top 5 episode of Top 5 Week. We did X Factors for the Tennessee Titans with Will Levis at the top of that list. Curious to see what you guys have to say about the X Factors. Again, let me know down below or hit me up on Twitter at TicTacTitans. Thank you for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. It's the #1 Tennessee Titans podcast in the world for a reason. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. We're going to have a lot of fun over the next few weeks. We're going to do some roster previews, 53-man roster projections, and then training camp is right around the corner. But right now we're talking about breakout candidates for the Tennessee Titans, and no one is at the top of that list other than Tyjae Spears. All right, I think that Tyjae Spears is the best running back on the team. I have continued to say throughout the offseason that regardless of the Tony Pollard signing and Tony Pollard's contract number, Tyjae Spears is RB1, okay? Spears has such great explosiveness. For a guy his size, he runs strong with power. People look at Tyjae Spears as a small guy who can't help in the red zone or on the goal line or short yardage. Tyjae Spears was statistically one of the most effective short yardage running backs on 3rd and 4th down last year in the NFL. So he's a guy who's slippery, he's strong, and I think more importantly than anything, he just has elite football character. I mean, look at the twinkle in Ran Carthon's eye when he talks about Tyjae Spears. Look at it. Just watch it. He loves him. Ran Carthon loves Tyjae Spears like he's his son. For real. He loves Tyjae Spears because of the type of person that he is. And I think that mentality shows out on the field. He's never going down on first contact. He's always fighting for more yards. For a guy his size, he runs so hard-nosed. He is not afraid of anything. I think it's smart to have good balance. You don't want Tyjae Spears being like a Derrick Henry in terms of usage. You don't want Tyjae Spears to be a bell cow back. But as I've said all along, Tyjae Spears can be your primary running back as part of a committee. So Tony Pollard, good player, bigger bodied guy. I think he's going to be very helpful to the Tennessee Titans. Very excited about Tony Pollard in the backfield. But Tyjae Spears is one of those names right now where fantasy football players are like, yeah, Tyjae Spears. I like Spears, blah, blah, blah. I got my dynasty friends reaching out like, man, Tyjae Spears, blah, 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 blah. But I think Tyjae Spears' name is going to burst onto the scene for the national conversation, not just the fantasy football conversation. So love some Tyjae Spears as a breakout candidate. Peter Skoronski. So everybody who listens to the show or has watched the show for a while knows that I'm a big Peter Skoronski fan. All right. I'm a score guy. I really do love me some Peter Guns, as he was dubbed by one of my commenters on Twitter. Love that name, especially with how big he looks this year. Last year, he's a rookie. He is surrounded by garbage on the left and right side of him with Aaron Brewer at center. Look, Aaron Brewer is a good run blocker, but he is truly garbage in pass protection. He's just small. There's nothing he can do. He tries hard. He seems like a good guy, tougher than a $2 steak, but having Aaron Brewer on your right side and then Jalen Duncan, Andre Dillard, this version of NPF on your left side, I mean, that's a tough situation for a guard to be in, let alone a rookie guard in a bad offense where people are not afraid to bring pressure downhill. And not only that, but we have the midseason appendectomy where he loses 15 to 20 pounds of muscle. He's talked about how that affected him. He is a guy, he said, I don't want to make excuses. But, I mean, obviously that's a big deal. And with how much bigger Peter Skoronski looks this year, I think that he can break out to being one of the top 5 guards in the NFL. Like when you talk about young interior offensive linemen who are at the top of the game, I think Peter Skoronski's name will be on that list by this time next year. All right. And then also a quick one, Josh Wiley. We talked about Josh Wiley. I think that Chigakonkwo and his production lately is pretty close to what his production will be for most of his career. I don't think Chigakonkwo is ever going to be 1,000-yard receiver, 800 receiving yards, stuff like that. 500, 600. I think that's a good range. Josh Wiley could be the tight end one this year. And I think he has the potential with his mismatch capabilities, his body size, all that. I think that he has the potential to be that 800-yard receiver, a big red zone threat. I think those two guys together could be absolutely fantastic. So very excited for that. I think that Tyjae Spears and Peter Skoronski could be Pro Bowl level players. I'm not saying that Josh Wiley is going to break out in that way, but based on what we saw from Wiley last year to where I think we could be talking about him next year, it would be considered a breakout season. Okay. On defense, Roger McCreary. I've been talking about Roger for 2 seasons now, saying how great of a player he is. Now that he doesn't have to play on the outside, hopefully people stay healthy, there's more depth, he needs to be on the inside. If he can stay on the inside all year, where he's supposed to be, he's just gonna ball out. And with an improved cornerback group in general, that should help Roger McCreary out matchup-wise, confidence-wise, and his mates. I think that Roger McCreary is a guy who, I've been saying this the last few weeks, but the national conversation, the national media is starting to pick up on how good Roger McCreary is. I think he could be considered a top 5 slot cornerback in the NFL, bar none, by the end of the season. Honestly, I think he's probably right outside of that right now. I think he's probably top 8, top 10. But people will really know about Roger McCreary because he'll make more big plays this year now that he's able just to focus on his assignment and isn't worried so much about everything going on around him, and he could just play in the slot where he's supposed to be. The last name that I have for you here, it is a bit controversial. I know, it is a bit controversial. Jack Gibbons. Now, I talked about this at the end of last week, but a lot of Titans fans don't like Jack Gibbons, and I get it. He's not the most athletic guy. When you watch him run, chase, blah, 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 you're like, man, he's slow. But national people who watch all the teams have a different viewpoint of Jack Gibbons. Okay? Gibbons is a guy who is always in the right place, has great awareness, understands route concepts, can get his teammates lined up. He may not be an elite athlete, but as Brian Callahan said, you don't have to be an elite athlete to be a good off-ball linebacker in the NFL. And this ties into my positional value conversation about inside linebacker. If you've been listening throughout the draft season and throughout our roster conversations, how I feel about the inside linebacker position from a value and from a roster building standpoint, this ties right into that. Gibbons could take a step forward to where instead of us having these conversations of, is Cedric Gray going to replace him? Is this going to happen? Is he going to make the team? Is it blah, blah, blah? I think it could be one of those things where most people are like, yeah, Jack Gibbons is a starting linebacker in the NFL. He's our starter. We want to improve. We want to build, but we know that Jack Gibbons is a starter. I think he can be that consistent, and all he needs to do is make some more plays, and I think having better secondary, better up front around him will allow him to do that. So I think we could see a breakout year where Jack Gibbons goes from, overlooked, underrated, surprise starting linebacker for the Titans to, oh, Jack Gibbons is a starting linebacker in the NFL, period. No question about it. So I think that's what we could be looking at for some breakout. So again, Tyjae Spears, Peter Skoronski, Josh Wiley, Roger McCreary, Jack Gibbons. Let me know your breakout candidates down below. Now we got to talk about guys who it's a make or break year for them in the NFL. Before we do, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Look, guys, comparison is the thief of joy. It's easy to envy other people's lives in today's day and age. You see it on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Everybody looks like they got it all together, but in reality, they probably don't. Therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, so you could start living your best life. Look, I worked with BetterHelp when I was moving a couple years ago. It was absolutely fantastic. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, you got to give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. that's designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. All you do is fill out a brief questionnaire. You get matched with a licensed therapist. And what I love is you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Titans fans, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. It is the first episode in Top 5 week. So I'm doing all the top fives that I did today. Now you guys have an understanding of what this is going to look like. Tomorrow, top 5 cut candidates for the Titans, top 5 first-time Pro Bowlers, top 5 trade options. Then next episode, my top 5 best players on the Tennessee Titans right now, my top 5 best Tennessee Titans of all time, and then my top 5 personal favorite Tennessee Titans. On Thursday, I'm going to do a top 5 episode with your top 5 questions from Twitter. So I put out a post on Twitter asking for your top 5 list. It could be Titans. It can be anything. And then on the last episode of the week, I'm going to get some top 5 lists from you guys on YouTube. So make sure that I give my 2 favorite platforms their day. But send me your top 5 requests if you want me to answer your top 5 question. I can only pick 3 per day, so keep that in mind. But just do want to let you guys know what this week is going to look like. Also want to let you know to check out Locked On Sports today. It's 24/7. It's streaming on YouTube. It's on Amazon Fire TV. Get rid of ESPN and Fox Sports 1. Just throw on Locked On Sports today 24/7 and get your sports background noise. All right. But as for make or breaks, obviously we got to start with Treylon Burks. I feel like that is not a hot take that Treylon Burks is in a make or break year. I would say not only for his Titans career, but for his NFL career, okay? Burks has been an utter disappointment. And not only that, but there are questions about his work ethic off the field, how much he loves football, questions about his conditioning, how hard he's willing to work. All those questions are swirling right now. And, you know, the coaching staff is saying, well, we think Burks has been exceptional. He's worked really hard, blah, blah, blah. But then they're also saying, hey, he's got to work to find a spot on the game day roster. He's got to be on special teams and be a gunner and blah, blah, blah to, find a spot on the roster. I think that Treylon Burks is going to have another opportunity with another team eventually. But if he doesn't show up this year in some capacity, the view of him is going to be way down. It's going to be in the dumps around the NFL. He's going to get veteran minimum contracts. These Tyler Boyd up to $5 million, but it's $3.5 million guaranteed. If Burks doesn't do something this year, that's what he's going to be looking at for the rest of his career. And he may not even be on the Titans next year. So I think this season, whether Burks he may be in the NFL for a few years after, but whether he's ever going to live up to that first round billing or not, some of you have already given up on that. But if he is, it's going to start this year. It is a make or break year for who he is going to be as a player the rest of his career. Period. All right. On that same note, I have to spend as much time on it, but Kyle Phillips. Kyle Phillips was a 5th round pick who was entirely overrated by Titans fans because of what he did week 1 against the Giants his rookie year. That one game alone has led to so much unnecessary hype for Kyle Phillips. Like, we all wanted it to work out. We did. But he's just not sturdy enough, not explosive enough. The punt return fiasco has really hurt his career. That was something he had to be good at to find a long-term career in the NFL. I think there's a chance Kyle Phillips doesn't even make the team this year. Like, I think he might get cut after training camp. So, it's clearly make or break for him. I would say training camp is make or break for Kyle Phillips. Not even the regular season, training camp. Also, NPF. I've talked about NPF. We talked about him, the X Factor. If he wants to be considered a starting level offensive lineman in the NFL, he's got to put in the work this year. He's got to prove it this year. He's going to be given the opportunity. He's going to be, they're basically giving him the starting right tackle job at this point, if he's ever going to be healthy and get out on the field. So, NPF, like Treylon Burks, the way he's viewed, the perception of him as a player, and then in turn, the money that he's going to get going forward will be determined by how he does this year. Period. On defense, two guys who are from the same draft class, who were drafted by John Robinson, who are not Rand Carthon, Brian Callahan guys, Rashad Weaver and Elijah Molden. I'm going to talk about them a lot in a lot of these discussions because they are interesting players. Weaver looks slimmed down. Maybe he does take that next step this year, but there is a chance. The average NFL career is 3 years. So there is a chance that neither of these players are even in the NFL after the year. It's their 4th year now. There's a chance that neither of them are in the NFL next year. So not only is it make or break for them in their role with the Titans, that's obvious, it's a contract year, but it's make or break for their NFL lives, similar to NPF, similar to Burke, similar to Phillips. Like, it's make or break for them with the Titans, but it's make or break for them, period, as professional football players. Can Elijah Molden, who right now, if things stay in and the Titans don't sign a safety, is being handed the starting safety spot, can he take advantage of that where he wasn't able to take advantage of it last year and ended up getting passed up by Kayvon Wallace? And I think a healthy Mike Brown could have bit into those snaps too. And then with Weaver, had the 5.5 sack season when Harold Landry was out and got way more opportunities. But can he do something against the run? Can he quit being so undisciplined in his pass rush and getting too far up the field, opening avenues for quarterbacks? Like, can he be a more disciplined player in year 4? Can he be a guy who can hold up against the run? I mean, look at Weaver. He's huge. He's 6'4", 250 something. Like, he is big enough and strong enough to set that edge in the run game. One thing I will say, Mike Vrabel is not a bad football coach. He's a good football coach. He wasn't the right football coach for the Titans, but he's a good football coach. And his philosophy in run defense of edge, wall, swarm, that's a great coaching phrase right there. You create the edge, then you wall up the interior, and then you swarm to the ball carrier. Rashad Weaver was never able to set that edge. If he can do that this year and is more explosive and in better shape and is more disciplined, then he can make a big impact. If not, and we see what we saw from him last year, again, Rashad Weaver could be out of the NFL by this time next year. I think that Molden and Weaver will get another shot with another team next year, but still, it's going to be non-guaranteed money, training camp, tryout type status. So, again, my make or break guys, Treylon Burks, Kyle Phillips, Nicholas Petit-Frere, Rashad Weaver, Elijah Molden. Basically all the guys who were drafted by the previous regime who haven't really lived up to it so far. So, let's see it. But I'll be back with you guys tomorrow for another day of top 5s, unless big Titans news happen. Then I'm going to pivot, make sure that we talk about that. But we are in the dead period, so there is a good chance that we don't get any news. But would love to see a Justin Simmons signing, Carl Lawson, Emmanuel Ogbah, Edge, something like that. Would be nice. Knowing the Titans, they'll just sign another offensive tackle from Bill Callahan's past, right? Anyways, that is going to do it for me today, though, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.